Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel, M Stewart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to learn how to paint a realistic sunset acrylic painting. And I'm going to teach you how to paint realistic sunset clouds using shadows, highlights and mainly different colours that I'm going to teach you how to mix so you can paint a super realistic sunset acrylic landscape painting. So let's get into it. For a nice easy tutorial today we're going to need the following colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow, matte orange, rose pink, crimson, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, iris purple, burnt umber and matte black. Now I've got a burnt sienna painted canvas here and all I've done is I've done a tiny bit of ocean at the bottom and then I've done a big blue cliff. I've just used cobalt blue to block in a big blue cliff. We're going to have the sun really low today and I'm going to teach you how to paint a realistic sunset and how to paint sunset clouds. So we're going to go up into the painting and make all the background sky first. We're going to use a big round headed brush. Big brushes are much easier to block things in, so they just cover more of your canvas. And the first thing we're going to do is just block in our sun with some titanium white. So nice and easy start. Just going to block in the sun with a big blob of titanium white. Now we're going to get bright orange and go around it. What we're going to try to do is make a nice glow of light around the sun just using really bright pure orange. So again, don't worry if it's scruffy, don't worry if you go over your cliff, we're just blocking in the painting. So now around the sun it's going to be slightly darker, so we're going to get some pink. So we're going to get this lovely rose pink. Just use the same brush, so don't worry if the orange and the pink mix. We're going to mix orange into that colour. And just to make it a little bit darker and more realistic, we're going to add a little bit of burnt umber to the mix, so just a tiny bit. And what that does is it just makes it sort of smoky and darker. So we're just going to go around it. And with your big brush, what you can do, if you just gently push the orange into it, you can just slowly blend it. So no water, just have a nice soft bristled brush. As I say, we're just blocking in. Don't worry if it's scruffy. We'll go all over this. All we want to do is just get the basic colours and match it to the sky, and then we'll work on all the detail and all the realism afterwards. So if we just go down to the horizon where the cliff is, and there we go, easy peasy. So we've got this lovely little gradient. Now what happened, my camera decided to turn off, but all I did was I made this colour, which is purple, a little bit of cobalt blue, so just add some purple to cobalt blue, and lots of white, and you get this lavender colour. And all I did was add it to the remaining colour of that orange, pink and brown that we mixed. So I just mixed these two tones together and I just created this little gradient. And then all I'm going to do is now, with no orange in it, I'm just going to take this colour that we just mixed, which is blue, purple and lots of white, and just mix it in. So you can see, sorry my camera skipped. I will show you in a minute because I've re-recorded it, so don't worry. But all it is we made this colour and I mixed it into the previous colour just in the middle there. And then I'm just using this colour on its own, so just no orange in it, no brown, no pink. And I'm just gradually coming down and I'm just mixing it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the sky go cooler as it goes away from the sunlight. So now we're going to mix this colour, which is cerulean blue and cobalt blue together, and just lots of white. So it's the same as the purple, it's just a lot more blue. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and predominantly white, and you should get this lovely pastel blue. So where we made a pastel blue purple previously, we're now just going into blue. And again, all we're going to do is block this in. Now don't worry if the tutorial is a little bit fast. I'm going to go over all this in a minute. I'm going to repeat the stage because normally what I do with the background sky, I give it 2 coats of paint, because otherwise I've got lots of street marks and I don't have nice transitions that I want. So what I tend to do is go over with the same colours twice. So I'll repeat the process in a minute if it's going a little bit too fast for you. So all we're doing, we're making a darker shade of blue. So all you do now to make a darker shade of blue is cerulean blue and cobalt blue and less white. So you've still got a little bit of white, but you've got more blues in it now. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue and less white. So the colour is still very pastel. Still got some white, but it's a lot darker. So if I show you here, look, it's a lot darker if we make our corners nice and dark. And all we're going to do, I'm just going to speed up the video a tad, just because all I'm doing is blocking it in for 2 minutes. So I'm just fast forwarding it so it's a little bit quicker. You can pause the video if it does go a little bit too fast for you. But all I'm doing, I'm just using a big brush just to cover up as much canvas as I can. And then when I go into the previous colour, the lighter blue, I just ease up on my brush and just create X shapes into the other lighter tone. So look, all I'm doing, I'm using plenty of paint. I'm just trying to cover up as much of that burnt sienna. The reason I use burnt sienna, I think I say this every video, is simply for the fact it shows me where I've missed areas. It also shows me where I've got brush marks and I need to thicken the paint and give it a second layer of paint. And when you're painting in pastel colours for things like sunsets and nice landscape paintings, it really shows. So that's why you can paint. You don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. I just do because it's a helpful tip. A lot of artists do it because it just shows you where you've missed in your canvas and it just shows you where you need to rework. So look, once you've blocked in your painting, we've got this lovely transition in the sky. There's lots of little brush marks. You can see all the streaks in it. So by just adding a second coat of the exact same paint, just by cleaning your brushes and just drying your work, because this is completely dry, you can make your colours look more vibrant. So you can make your colours look much more brighter. So look, just by going over the top with this exactly the same shade of orange, it just looks twice as bright. So if you want to make your artwork look more vibrant, more realistic, I've got plenty of water here on my brush and it's going everywhere. So I want to leave that in because I want to show you, even me, I cock up a lot. Especially when I'm filming, because it makes me self-conscious. I think if I didn't film, I could probably paint this scene in about 20 minutes. But because I'm filming, I'm very self-conscious. So look, all we're doing, we use pure orange around the sun, and then we're using orange, pink, and a tad of little bit of burnt umber, and we're just making the heat. So the reason we're using orange and pink, if you think of a colour wheel, they're very warm. So the sun is a big light source, so we're using warm colours, so to suggest that the horizon, the sun is setting, that these warm colours are sort of going down, and then as the light source goes away, the sky gets cooler as it goes up, so we're using cooler colours. So all I did, where my camera skipped, I made the lavender colour, so that was purple, which was purple, cobalt blue and lots of white, and all I did, look, I just mixed it into the previous colour that we used just to create a bridge tone. A bridge tone is just an in-between colour, so not too hot, not too cold. Think of the Three Little Bears. I'm just using a colour that's still got plenty of the previous colour, but I want to also make it cooler, and cooler colours such as purple and blue just do that. So we're just using a big brush, and as I say, by going over it twice, I know it's a bit repetitive, it's only because the predominant part of this painting is the background sky. You don't want to get where you've added all your clouds and your highlights over the top and realise you've missed bits on your canvas. So by just taking your time and going over it twice, you can make your background sky look so much more professional. And then all we're doing now, there's no heat in this colour. It's just cobalt blue, purple and predominantly white. So we're just going into a lavender colour. And again, look, if there's any streaks, I'm just trying to remove any brush marks, any of the burnt sienna. I'm trying to get all my transitions so all the colours just fade in into the next colour and the next colour, just so it looks really, really nice. And then it was light pastel blue, which is cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and again plenty and plenty of white. And again, look, I'm just using X shapes to blend into the previous colour. So all I'm doing, I'm easing up on the brush. I'm not hardly pushing down. I've got hardly any water on my brush, just got plenty of paint. And my brush is really, really soft. And all I'm doing, I'm just gently blending it into the previous colour, that lavender colour. Just create little X shapes. Just take your time. By mastering the underpainting, the background sky, when we put all the clouds on top, it will trick your eye and it will make it look super realistic. And then the last colour was just cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and not as much white. So it looks lighter here when we're applying it, but obviously you can see with acrylics it dries a hell of a lot darker. So you can see the colour above it. That is the same colour, believe it or not. So it just shows you while we're filming and all these paints are wet, it's quite deceptive. It looks a lot lighter than it is. But so always think that when you're using acrylics, they always dry darker. And as I say, acrylics are super easy to use. So if you ever make a mistake, they're perfect for beginners and intermediate painters. Just dry your work with a hairdryer and you can rework areas. So if there's a bit of your canvas where for some reason, this happens to me a lot, the paint doesn't take, or you've missed a bit and there's a scuff mark because your hand's gone in it. Like, look at my fingers, they're all covered in paint. You've put a fingerprint on it. Just dry your work with a hairdryer and then just reapply the same colour paint and it'll be dry in 2 minutes and you can just rework areas and make it look smoother and prettier. So I know it's a bit repetitive, but as I keep saying to you, the underpainting and the transitions in all these tutorials is the most important part, because when you put the detail over the top, that's the thing that tricks your eyes and creates the realism. So having a realistic background sky is the first step to having a beautiful realistic sunset painting. So now look, it's dry, it's a lot darker. We've got some of these little wispy bits where the brushes have made, but it's kind of cool because it kind of looks like clouds. But can you see now we've got this dark blue at the top, we've got this light blue in the middle, and this sort of pinky purple, and then into this bright glowing orange around the bottom of the horizon. So what we're going to do, I'm going to zoom in for you so it's nice and easy to follow along. Just going to take titanium white and just create a semicircle and create a sun. And then to create the glow from the sun, we're going to take cad yellow and some bright orange. And just around the white of the sun, we're just going to gently blend some cad yellow and orange just to create that nice glow. So all we're doing is just creating a semicircle around that white blob. And then we're just going into pure orange and just gently blending the previous colour. Just again, so the transition looks really, really smooth. So you don't see the jump in the colours. Just creates a little glow, very, very faint around the sun. And then what we're going to do, we're going to start to paint sunset clouds. So around the sun is going to be extremely bright and extremely hot. So we're going to use hot colours to make that into our painting. So the first thing we're going to do is just use bright matte orange. I think matte orange is just a matte version of cad orange, if anyone's wondering at home. And all I'm doing, I'm just creating shapes of clouds around the sun. So all I'm doing, I'm using a smaller brush and I'm just creating little wispy shapes. So now we've got the under sky and now we're putting these darker clouds on top. They should stand out against the background. So just like the sky is getting cooler as it's moving away from the sunlight, our clouds are going to get cooler, so they're going to get darker in tone. So we're going to mix orange and brown together. and a little bit of pink. So orange, brown and pink. And then we're just going to add a little bit of crimson just to make it darker than the background. So a little bit of crimson and a little bit of purple. So a little bit of crimson and a little bit of purple. Just a tiny bit of purple. And we're just going to make a slightly more grayer, darker tone. So again, remember, acrylics dry darker. So even though this looks quite light, now that I'm applying it, it's still going to be darker once it dries in a minute. We'll show you. And again, we're just doing the same trick. We're just trying to create little cloud shapes. And then now as we move up into the sky, and we've got that lavender background, the colour, can you see now it's starting to dry, it's getting darker. And it's starting to stand out against the transition in the background. So we're just using colours to trick the eye. So if you imagine it's the same cloud, look, we're just joining it onto the highlights. We'll work on the transition in a minute when we're neaten it all up. But if you imagine this part of the cloud is getting less sunlight. So just by adding more brown and more purple to the mix, so we're adding cooler, darker colours to the mix. So you see it's less hot, it's getting cooler and it's getting darker. It's turning more greyish. We can just blend that into the previous tone. So if you just think of it as all the sunlight is to the left and all these cooler tones are to the right. So these areas of the clouds are getting less sunlight, less heat, so the colour is cooler and darker. So now it's starting to dry. Can you see they look very dark? And then we're going to use this colour as we move up into the painting. So still got a little bit of heat in it, still got a little bit of orange in it. Because this area is directly under the sun, or above the sun, excuse me. So if you want to make areas a little bit hotter and brighter, just add a little bit of orange to your mix. And if you want to make areas darker and cooler, you can add things like purple, blue and brown to the mix. So we've just added a tiny bit of orange to our mix because this area is nearer to the sun, it's just above it. So it's still got that hint of orange, just to create a nice sort of bright tanny colour. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just scraping the canvas, just pushing my brush gently down to create shapes. So I just create little wispy shapes to create clouds. I'm leaving plenty of gaps so the background sky can show off. And we can have little bits breaking away from these clouds. So all I do, look, I just create little splodges. Sort of looks like they're breaking off the clouds because you get those little floating clouds. So a lot on how to paint a realistic sunset is the colours, it's your palette. As I say, you can work on the clouds, you'll get better, you can use reference photos, but it's the colours that will trick the eye. So we've got this lovely warm glow around our sun. So as we move to the right here and we move up into the painting, we're going to get cooler. So just remember, orange and pink is the basic colours we're using, but to make them cooler we're just going to add brown and purple. So brown and purple to the mix. And you can even add a little bit of blue if you choose to make it even cooler. So brown, purple and blue are all the cool colours, that's what I've got them over on the right, and all the warm colours are things like orange, yellow and pink. So we've made this nice purpley grey, so it's a lot cooler. And all we're going to do is just make the ends of these clouds as they float off into the distance. And we're just gently blending them into the previous colour. We can have some low ones sitting on the horizon. So what you can do, look, if you take hardly any paint, you can just sort of glaze areas of the previous colour once they're dry and just make the transitions look smoother. And then look, we're just doing the exact same trick. So now we've got a cooler colour. And can you see just already how that's starting to trick your eye? You've got that glow around the sun. You've got the nice glowing horizon. And then we've just got these cooler clouds as we move up into the cooler background sky. So look, again, we're just having a few breakaway clouds. I'm just doing a few splats. So look, all we do, just create little shapes. And look at that, that's looking fantastic already. So we've got this lovely area now. So we've done the bottom area, that was super quick. So now as we move up, we're going to get even cooler. So we're going to add a little bit more purple. And all we're going to do, look, we're just going to glaze over the very tops of these clouds. So if you imagine their bottoms are nice and warm because they're getting the underneath heat from the sun, but their top will be in the shade. So all we're doing to create that 3D aspect, look, we're just making the tops of these clouds a little bit cooler, but leaving the underneath to look like it's glowing in the sunlight. So it's really easy. So now we're going to move into the middle stage of our painting. So we're going to get even cooler. So we're going to have more purple. Now I use this iris purple. Iris purple is just normal purple and cobalt blue together. So if you can't buy it in shops, just get normal violet purple and a little bit cobalt blue. Now all I'm doing, I've just added a teeny tiny bit of crimson, and then I've added some cobalt blue and some burnt umber. So purple, cobalt blue, a little bit of crimson and some burnt umber. And we're going to paint some big clouds. So how to paint sunset clouds? Well, I always start very straight at the bottom of the painting. And then as I move up into the painting, I create them more diagonal. And the reason I tend to do a really big one like this in the middle, going up at an angle, is it gives the viewer something to concentrate on. So all I'm doing, I'm going to create a big cloud in the middle just to have something to focus on. So to get big splats, all we do is push down hard with plenty of paint, and then to get little splats you just ease up on the pressure and just barely touch the canvas, and you'll get more of the wispy clouds. So if you want really dark shapes, just push down really hard into your canvas. And if you want to create wispy edges, just really fine edges, just ease up on the pressure so your brush hardly touches the canvas, and it will just create a little sort of grazing, sort of smoky effect, and you'll just get a chalky residue. So I like to do that around the edges. So I push down really hard, and then around the edges I just ease up on the pressure and just make it more like a scrape. I hope that makes sense. Now this part in the corner, I was going to put a humongous cloud in this top right corner, and I picked up the wrong paint. Don't worry, we can paint over anything. Now because our background sky is dry, if you make a mistake with your cloud, you can just use a baby wipe or a wet bit of kitchen roll and just wipe off an area. So I was going to have a huge cloud here in the corner to frame it, but when I painted it and took a step back, I didn't really like it. So don't paint this one here in the top right hand corner if you're watching along at home, because you'll see in a minute me change it. So if you just hang tight and just don't paint this one right in the top right hand corner, because I'm going to change it in a minute. So there we do, we'll just have some little floating ones here. So they're all going sort of diagonal at an angle, and that sort of frames the painting. And as you can see, look, they're a lot darker than the previous ones, so they're getting less sunlight, they're a lot harsher, they look more in the shade. So you can see now how all these colours are starting to trick your eye. It's creating the realism. You see, I don't like the one in the top right. I was going to have one and frame it and then create loads of highlights on it, but I think it's a bit overwhelming. So look, if you've dried your painting before you apply your clouds, you can just rub them off. So that is the wonderful thing of acrylics. You can just get a baby wipe and just wipe them off. So now we've got this lovely background sky and we've got this lovely transition between our hots and colds in our clouds. Now we're going to create highlights on our clouds to create realism. So all I'm doing, I've swapped to a fine liner, so a thin, small headed bristled brush, and I'm using pure cad yellow to outline my clouds. So again, if you imagine the sun is extremely hot, we're going to use bright cad yellow, just super bright, super vibrant. And all I'm doing is creating wonky sort of deliberate splats and outlines of my clouds. I'm trying to make them nice and bobbly to make it look like an outline of light surrounding my clouds. So again, we have to use a brighter colour than the orange to give the glow effect, hence the fact we're using bright cad yellow. And again, because this colour is brighter, it just creates a gorgeous outline and it makes our sunset look super realistic. So if you just imagine all these clouds are getting super illuminated, they're getting all that vibrancy from the sun, and they've just got this luminous outline where the light sort of creeps around them. So again, just try and make wonky shapes of clouds, really easy. You can even just create splats, and these can be some of the clouds that are just completely in the sunlight. So not even an outline. If you want to just create little random splats, they just look like certain clouds that are extremely bright. Now there's the subscribe button and the bell notification. If you haven't turned on the bell notification, please do so. What it does is it tells you as soon as a brand new painting tutorial is uploaded. I'm trying to do at least 1 to 2 painting tutorials a week for everyone, because I know the channel is growing and everyone's enjoying them. If there's anything you would like to learn, if there's anything you struggle with at home, such as waves, clouds, mountains, any landscapes, just put your ideas in the comments below and I will try to include them in future painting tutorials. And thank you so much for everyone who's liking and supporting and subscribing to the channel. It's really helping and really growing the channel, so thank you. Now while I was blabbing away, I mixed another colour, and all I did was I used cad yellow and plenty of white and a tiny bit of pink. So it's cad yellow, plenty of white to create a Naples yellow, so cad yellow and plenty of white, and a dot of pink just to make it look a little bit darker, and we've got this outline colour. So sorry I was blabbing. So again, it's just the same technique. You can either create little splats, excuse me, to create some clouds that look like they're just getting the sunlight, and then you can also outline your existing clouds just to make them look like they have a glow of sunlight. So if you just imagine that the sunlight is coming from the bottom, so always try to do the base and the bottom of these clouds, so this edge here. And by just outlining them, it just creates the realism. When we zoom out later, you can see, just makes your work look really vibrant, really realistic, and makes your sunset look amazing. And it's such an easy technique. If you think creating wonky outlines is not really hard, is it? Just creating splats on wonky outlines. It's very relaxing as well. Now we're going to mix some pink into that mix. So we're just going to add more pink. So it's going to be white predominantly, a little bit of cad yellow, and lots of pink. So it's still really white, but it's just got a lot more pink in it now. And again, it's just slightly darker, just so when it dries darker, even though it's an outline, it will look less harsh than the yellow. But it still gives it a really nice vibrant outline. So as I say, you just have to create shapes. You can even go in the grooves of the clouds just to make your clouds look more 3D, just to create more shape. You can punch holes, look, you can punch holes in your clouds if you want more of the background sky shining through, if you don't like them. And as your clouds dry, your highlights dry, you can always just go over them. So just by going over them, just like we did with the background sky, with highlights, because you're using very pastel colours, acrylics will pick up the paint from underneath. So sometimes you just have to go over your highlights twice. So you just might have to outline areas twice just to make them look more vibrant. Now again here, I was going to put a really striking pink that we're using and do an outline, but I kind of think it doesn't go with the yellow. So hang tight on that very bottom bit. That's why I've just left it alone. I'm going to make that area a bit more orangey, but you can do it on this bit. So on all these clouds you can copy away, just don't do the one right at the bottom that I've just outlined. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just going over the highlights in the same colours, now they're dry, just to make them look much more vibrant, make them really stand out and make them super bright. Because I think here this pink is too light, so let's keep using the pink up here, so we can do the same trick that we'll do on the base of all these clouds. So all these clouds are getting sunlight. We can even do the splat technique. We're just creating some bright splats, and these can be some extremely bright clouds. They're just getting pure sunlight in between the gaps. So all I do, look, the same technique as the clouds. I just create little floater ones breaking off, but now in a highlight colour. So take your time, just relax. So look, just creating splats. There's no detail. It's all in the colours. And I use plenty of paint. So if you see here, I really load up my brush with paint. I hardly ever dip my brush in water. I kind of only dip my brush in water when I really need to, just to keep it moving. So I go through a lot of paint. By using thick paint you can get really bright highlights. So the thicker the paint, the brighter the highlight. So again, just on the base of these clouds, they're all getting sunlight on their bums. We're going to have some random splats over here. So this is looking fantastic already. It's so easy. This is what I say, it's just steps. It's just following the steps. So this area, I'm going to make it a bit more orange. So I'm just going to add pure matte orange and cad yellow together. Sorry, it's a bit off camera. So there we go. So matte orange and cad yellow together to create a sort of really sort of bright pastel orange. So an orangey yellow. And I'm just going to do the same outline trick, and I'm just going to interlink it. That pink's still a bit wet. Never mind. We'll just wait for it to dry and we'll just colour it in. There we go. And same technique. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more brighter, a little bit more orange. Because if you imagine all this area is still very, very warm. It's still very close to the sun. So even though the highlights Again, look, with the splat technique, where we could create little ones floating off. It's just with a warmer tone, it just makes all the transitions all come together and interlink. So look, you can just go over the top, just go around areas. Look, just use a fine liner. Fine liners are perfect for this. Look, and just by outlining it, see how much it brings your cloud to life? Look, you can just poke holes, gives it much more definition. And look, we do the splat technique again, just with some orange. Just have some areas that look like they're getting pure sunlight. Our sunset's coming together. This is so cool. And look, now we're all dry. Just go over areas. If your areas are like mine and they just dry a bit flat, look a bit naff, a bit rubbish, just go over them twice. Again, it's so easy. It's not hard. You can just see where you not need to rework. Just take your time and just rework it. So that's what I'm saying. Acrylics are so easy. You don't have to wait there for 3 days like oil paints. So you can just go over them, dry with a hairdryer or just let it air dry. It takes about 5-10 minutes. And just reapply paint. So look, where we've got the yellow, look, you could do the same, just make it more vibrant. And then I can gradually let the paint run out, look, and just blend it into that orange. And just make my transitions look even more realistic. So now they all blend. I can just shade areas that I can just add a tiny bit of yellow, just make it look like, again, it's all matching. And look at that, look how fantastic and realistic that's starting to look. So now we're going to move up to cooler highlights because we've got cooler clouds and we're getting less sunlight. So we're going to use the pink, which is a lot cooler. And we're going to use crimson, which is darker, just make it a little bit reddier. And a little bit of orange for heat. So we've got this nice, really nice pink. And we're going to add a little bit of purple to it, just to darken it down, and a little bit of our classic burnt umber, just to make it nice and earthy. So we've got this nice and earthy dark pink. And all we're going to do, is still very pastel, is do the same technique up here. So what will happen, because the sky is a lot darker with the blue, the pink will look nice and bright now, but when it dries, it will dry a little bit more matte and a little bit more flatter, and it will just look like highlights that are very subtle around our really dark edges. And again, look, I'm just doing the base, so all the bottom of these clouds are all getting the sunlight. And what it should do was, once it's dry, is be very subtle, but it will just look like really nice highlights. And again, look, you can do the splat technique in the sky. You don't have to just outline them. You can create little random splats in the sky. So the same technique, look, push down really hard for big splats. Just really ease off if you want them more wispy. And again, look, you can poke holes. If you don't like your clouds, you can change the shape of them using these highlights. See, I love painting clouds. It's so relaxing. It's so cool. Nothing I like more than sitting out by the ocean and watching waves and clouds. Just listening to the rhythm of the sea. Just relaxing and chilling. So I hope these paintings, once you create them, create that sense in you. So there we go, we've got this fantastic, easy, wonderful transition. And then we can get some blue and brown together. So we're going to mix cobalt blue burnt umber and a tiny bit of purple and a tiny bit of black, just a tiny bit of black, just a smidge. And we're going to create a really dark bluey brown colour. So we've just added a tiny bit of black and a tiny bit of purple. And all we're going to do, we're just going to put some really dark shadows on some of our clouds. So the same technique that we just did with the highlights, we're just going to do that on the very tops of some of these clouds. So some of these clouds, we're just going to create some little breakaway ones again, just like we did with the highlights. And these are all the areas of the clouds that aren't getting any sunlight and are almost a silhouette. So they're really harsh shadows, really dark. So again, just by creating some that are breaking away, it just creates the realism. So again, by making your corners dark and making the tops of these clouds dark, what it does is it just gets people to center and look down the middle or towards your light source, which will be our sun. So just by framing these clouds, look, just by making the very tops of them very dark, especially the ones in the corners, it just gets people to focus towards the lighted area. So it just gets people to focus towards our sunlight. Now what you can do is on each stage, as I've been saying to you, if you dry your work, so look, if we paint in all the darks and we've got all our highlights and you're happy with it, that's great. But if you're like me and you're a bit of a perfectionist and some things are bothering you, like the shapes of your clouds, what you can do is once you've finished doing all these highlights and shadows, is you can dry your work with a hairdryer. And you can paint in some of the background sky and change the shapes of the clouds. So you can punch holes basically in these clouds with the background sky colour. So if I just finish this, I will show you. So I'm just making some wispy ones, got hardly any paint. Just create some wispy ones here. So I don't really like the shape of my middle cloud here in the middle. So all I'm going to do, now this area is all dry, I've dried it with a hairdryer. All I'm going to do is use that blue that I mixed for the sky, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. And I'm just going to punch some holes in the sky. Now unfortunately, because the cloud was incredibly dark, because we used that very dark colour, it might just take 2 coats. So look, if you paint over, it's very easy to paint over, but if it all still shines through, a bit like while we painted our canvas burnt sienna, just dry your work, and once this area, even though it's repainted, is dry, if you just reapply the paint, it will cover it up and it will be like it was never there. So look, you can even punch holes in your clouds if you want to change the shape. So look, just by applying, once it's dry, just applying a second layer of paint. Sometimes even 3 if it's a really dark colour, if you've used something like black. So it's a really easy trick. Again, with acrylics, if you make a mistake, or as Bob Ross likes to say, a happy accident, you can easily fix it. You can easily change the shape of your clouds and punch holes using the sky. So look, if it dries mucky, look, you can still see the undercolour slightly. Just dry it with a hairdryer and just reapply the paint till it's gone. And it'll be like it was never there. So don't worry, don't panic. You can always change things. So our sunset painting is looking fantastic. So now we're going to do the cliff and the ocean and we'll be finished. God, look at that. We've only been 43 minutes and we're creating this masterpiece. How easy is this? So we're going to mix blue, cobalt blue and black and a little bit of brown. So we're just creating an off black because black on its own is a bit too silhouetted. So we're just going to add some blue and some brown. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to block in the cliffs. Now don't worry too much about creating a straight line. We're going to measure that in a minute with some tape. But all we're going to do, I just want to block in this cobalt blue just using this very dark black. And then we're going to create a nice straight line using some painting tape and we'll measure it. So all I'm doing, I'm trying to create a silhouette of a nice faraway cliff. I've used chalk just here just to get a rough outline of a straight line, but as I say, I don't want to sort of guess it. I'd much rather measure it. The worst thing you can do is guess a straight line. My easel's a bit wonky, so when I'm filming it always looks slightly wonky, but I assure you the painting is nice and straight and my measurements are straight. But if you just use a tape measure and some chalk, and if you just dry this with a hairdryer again, just so it's nice and dry before you put any painting tape, we can measure a straight horizon. But before we do that, what we're going to do, we're just going to get a big brush again. We're going to get plenty of orange and a little bit of brown, and we're just going to paint in the ocean. And we're going to put a little bit of pink. Why not? We'll put a little bit of pink in. So orange, brown and pink. And even though that black is still wet, I'm just going to gently touch it, and I'm just going to literally just make a really sort of shadowy ocean. So there we go. So don't worry if it mixes slightly. If you're worried about it mixing, you can just dry your cliff tops before you do this, and then you can measure it. But all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to block in the ocean, and then I'm going to dry it. I've measured using chalk where a straight line is, and now that my canvas is totally dry, I'm going to apply the tape, because what you don't want to do is apply the tape on wet paint, because you'll rip off what you've just painted. So look, I've got a nice straight line, and then all I'm going to do, look, I'm going to go use the black right down onto the tape, so I get a nice straight ocean horizon. There we go, perfect. Now, burnt sienna is a colour which I didn't put on the list, but you can just create yourself. All it is brown and orange. So if you get burnt umber and just add plenty of orange to burnt umber, you should get this colour. So all we're going to do, look, we're going to mix some brown and orange just underneath the sun. And then we're just going to get that brown and orange and mix some cobalt blue into it. So brown and orange, and then if you just mix some cobalt blue into it, we're just going to make a darker shade of the same colour and just gently mix it in. And what we're trying to do is we're just trying to create a little bit of a glow on our far off cliffs and our mountains. So just by using bright orange around the sun, so I'm just going to get some bright orange, we can create a glow effect. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to create, the orange is going to be the very, very brightest area, the very tip of the cliff top. And then the orange and brown or burnt sienna is just where it's getting slightly darker. And then the brown, orange and then blue is when it gets even more darker and it just merges into the black. So we're just trying to create a little glow. And then we're just going to get some cobalt blue and a tiny bit of orange and a tiny bit of brown, but predominantly cobalt blue. And then we're just going to put again just some subtle sort of diagonal lines, and this could just sort of be some terrain on our mountain. We'll come right down to the tape, and again it's just areas of the mountain. I tend to, look, if you go right up to the edge, you can make the edge just look a little bit softer, not as harsh as the black. And this is just where the sunlight is just cooling and just turning it a little bit more bluish. So again, it just makes our cliffs and our mountain top look more realistic. It's really subtle, you wouldn't notice it unless you're zoomed in or you're right up close to the painting. But it just makes our silhouette look less harsh by just giving it a slightly blue outline. So look, I'm just outlining the black and just creating some little diagonal lines for terrain and texture. And then if we remove our tape, we have a beautiful straight ocean. And then what we're going to do, just to finish it off, we're going to get some orange. We've got a nice clean brush. I've got no water on my brush, it's totally dry. I've just wiped it on my clothes, but you can use a piece of kitchen roll. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to glaze this area because now it's all dry. I'm just going to glaze this area of our canvas. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just rubbing this gentle bristled brush, this really soft bristled brush, to create a glow, sort of a hum of light on the ocean underneath the sun. But it still allows us to have our nice dark corners, because I'm going to sign her in the left hand corner, so I want it to be nice and dark. And if you want to, look, you can always go straight across and create sort of shimmer in the water. So if you wanted to, you could create waves, you can just leave little gaps, but I'm just going to keep it really nice and easy, because obviously this tutorial was on how to paint a sunset landscape painting and how to paint realistic sunsets and realistic sunset clouds. So look at that, so I've signed her in the left hand corner, so you've got this fantastic glow around your sun. You've learned how to do a shimmer on your ocean. You've learned how to do a background sky that has heat at the bottom and then it gets cooler as it moves up. You've learned how to outline and create highlights with your clouds and shadows to frame your work to make your sunset painting look super realistic. And we've got all this lovely detail. You even know how to change your clouds if you get into a mistake, how to measure, and how to create a straight ocean. And you can paint this fantastic sunset acrylic landscape painting in just under an hour. Look at that. So my name is Murray. Thank you so much for painting along with me. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. We have plenty of landscape paintings on the channel, so please subscribe if you haven't done so already. And take care, guys. See you soon. Happy painting. Bye.